The extreme cold had actually slowed my bleeding, cauterizing some of the worst wounds. The pain was keeping me conscious when hypothermia should have lulled me into final sleep, and my body, pushed beyond all normal limits, had triggered some desperate survival mechanism, burning muscle tissue for warmth, shutting down non-essential functions, directing every last resource toward keeping my heart beating and my brain functioning. I was being forged in ice and blood. Every moment of survival was changing me at a fundamental level. The woman who had walked to this post was dying. But something else, something harder, something that couldn't be broken, was being born in her place. The physician approached again, this time directly examining me without asking Blackwood's permission. He checked my pulse, looked at my wounds, assessed my level of consciousness. Then he turned to face Blackwood with fury in his eyes. "If she dies, you hang for murder." The law says 6 hours of exposure, yes. But it doesn't say expose a person until dead. She served 4 hours with injuries that should have killed her already. Release her now, or I testify against you at your trial. The crowd that had gathered around the women murmured in agreement. The balance had shifted. Blackwood's authority was crumbling. But would he yield, or would his pride demand my death? Blackwood's face went through several shades of red and purple. He was cornered, and he knew it. If he released me early, he admitted the punishment was excessive. If I died, he faced murder charges. Either way, he lost. His grand demonstration of authority had backfired spectacularly. The sentence is 6 hours, he insisted, but his voice had lost its commanding edge. The law. The law also says we hang murderers, the physician interrupted, and that's what you'll be if she dies in the next 2 hours. Release her now, provide medical care, and you can claim you showed mercy. Refuse, and I'll make sure everyone knows you deliberately killed a woman for embarrassing you. It wasn't just the physician now. Town elders, men whose opinions Blackwood couldn't simply ignore, were nodding in agreement. The women's circle had grown larger. Even some of Blackwood's own guards looked uncomfortable. The legitimacy of the punishment had evaporated in the face of its obvious brutality. Finally, with visible reluctance, Blackwood gave the order. Cut her down. The ropes released. I collapsed into the blood-stained snow, unable to support my own weight. My legs had been frozen in position for 4 hours. My back was a mass of frozen blood and torn flesh. My fingers and toes were black with frostbite. By rights, I should have been dead or dying, but I lifted my head. I looked directly at Blackwood, and I did something that made the entire crowd gasp in shock. I stood up. It took everything I had, every last scrap of will, every remaining bit of strength, every ounce of stubborn defiance. My legs shook so badly I almost fell 3 times, but I stood. I stood on my own 2 feet, naked to the waist, covered in blood and ice, my back destroyed, my body failing but standing, unbroken. The women rushed forward with blankets, wrapping me gently, supporting me without making me lean on them. They understood instinctively what I needed, to walk away from that post under my own power, to not be carried away like a broken victim, but to leave like someone who had survived. I looked at Blackwood one final time. Our eyes met. In his face, I saw the thing he'd feared most. I had survived his worst. His most powerful weapon had failed to break me. The law he'd wielded like a club had been revealed as the blunt instrument of petty revenge it truly was. His authority, built on intimidation and fear, had been exposed as hollow. I didn't speak. I didn't curse him or threaten him. I just looked at him with that calm, steady gaze, the look of someone who had passed through hell and emerged on the other side, transformed. Then I turned my back on him, my destroyed, wounded back that would bear the scars of his hatred forever, and I began walking. Every step was agony. Every movement tore at the wounds. But I walked through the town square, through the crowd that parted silently before me, back toward my cottage. The women walked with me, forming a protective circle, sharing their warmth, their strength, their solidarity. And behind us, the whipping post stood alone, a monument not to justice, but to the failure of cruelty. The recovery took months. I lost 2 toes and part of my left ear to frostbite. The wounds on my back healed slowly, leaving raised scars that would mark me for life. Some wounds went so deep they damaged muscle, leaving permanent pain and limited movement. I would never be physically whole again. But something else happened during that long, painful recovery. I became a different kind of whole. The woman who had stood before that town council 3 weeks earlier, confidently presenting evidence with the naive belief that truth and justice mattered, she was gone. The woman who emerged from her sickbed months later understood something deeper. Justice is never given. It's taken. It's fought for. It's defended by people willing to stand in that circle of women, willing to risk themselves for others. Blackwood never recovered his authority. He tried to continue as constable, but people had seen behind the mask. They'd watched him torture a woman nearly to death for the crime of being right when he was wrong. His orders were questioned. His judgments were challenged. Within a year, he'd been quietly removed from his position, pensioned off to avoid scandal. The whipping post was eventually taken down, not immediately. Change is slow in small medieval towns. But it stood unused, a reminder of what had happened there. And when they finally dismantled it years later, they burned the wood. Some stains, the townspeople decided, shouldn't be preserved. But the real change was more subtle. Women started speaking up more in town meetings. Not often, not loudly, this was still medieval England, but enough. Enough to matter. Enough to show that something had shifted. They'd seen one of their own survive the worst that power could inflict, and it had taught them something. We are stronger than we think. We are harder to break than they believe. We are worth defending. I tell you this story not because I'm proud of what happened to me. I'm not. Those scars still ache in cold weather. Those missing toes still make me limp. That back that was turned to raw meat still causes me daily pain. The physical damage was real and permanent. I tell you this story because the world still has its whipping posts. They look different now. Economic blacklisting, social media destruction, professional exile, but the goal is the same. To hurt you badly enough that you'll never speak up again. To make an example of you so others will stay silent. To use enough force that you'll be broken, discredited, destroyed as a warning to anyone else who might think about challenging authority. And I tell you this because you need to know, you can survive it. Not unchanged, survival always leaves scars. Not without cost, nothing worthwhile is free. But you can survive. You can stand up afterward. You can walk away under your own power, even when your body and spirit have been pushed beyond what you thought were your absolute limits. When you find yourself tied to that post, and you will, in one form or another, when you feel the lash cutting into you, when the cold is stealing your strength, when you think you can't possibly endure one more second, remember this: pain has limits, cruelty has boundaries, power has weaknesses. And the human spirit, when pushed to its breaking point, often discovers it can't actually be broken. Find your circle. Find your Mary who will stand up for you when you can't stand up for yourself. Find your women who will form a line between you and harm. And if you can't find them, be them. Be the person who stands in the cold to witness someone else's suffering. Be the voice that calls torture by its name. Be the hand that offers the blanket even when authority says no. That's how we survive. Not alone. Together. Not by being unbreakable individually, but by being unbreakable collectively. One person can be destroyed, but a circle of people who refuse to look away? That's a force that even medieval brutality couldn't overcome. That's my story. That's the truth I learned on a medieval winter day in 1645, tied half naked to a post after being whipped until I should have died. I learned that the human body can endure impossible things when it has no choice. I learned that solidarity is stronger than authority. I learned that sometimes survival itself is the most powerful form of resistance. I learned that scars tell stories. Every mark on my back is a testament not to what was done to me, but to the fact that I'm still here to tell about it. They tried to silence me with pain. They tried to freeze me into submission. They tried to make me a cautionary tale. Look what happens to women who forget their place. But I became a different kind of cautionary tale. I became proof that you can't beat truth into submission. You can't whip justice into silence. You can't freeze the human spirit into compliance. So if my story has reached something in you, if you've recognized your own whipping post, your own Blackwood, your own moment of standing in the cold with open wounds, then I want you to do something for me. Subscribe to Flow of History, because these stories matter. Not just the battles and kings, but the ordinary people who faced extraordinary cruelty and found extraordinary courage. We tell these stories because you need to know. Others have survived worse. You are not alone in your struggle. The human spirit is more resilient than any system designed to break it. Your wounds will scar, yes, but those scars are proof of survival, not evidence of defeat. Stay strong, stay warm when you can, and remember, it is in the deepest cold, the sharpest pain, the darkest moment of despair that we discover what we're truly made of. And what we're made of is always stronger than what they're made of. The fire they tried to extinguish with ice and blood, it's still burning, and it always will be.